Good morning. I'm Abby Phillip in New York. Is it the best of times or the worst of times? Once again, another American sector becomes a political Rorschach test. First, the good. The economy has largely defied gravity despite the uncertainty of Donald Trump's tariffs. The nation's GDP grew sharply in the second quarter, and people are shopping. Consumer spending, which powers 70% of the economy, is also up. Combine this with steady inflation, a stronger stock market, and tariff revenue in the billions, according to the White House.
So, first off, so those are facts, indisputable facts, numbers. I mean, she said according to the White House. So even in the intro, she's still leaving a little bit of room for saying that they're full of shit or whatever. But as of now, those are indisputable facts that that's the state of our economy. Now, let's see what the pivot is. Let's see where they're going to go to. Again, I don't watch this stuff. I like to take it in as I go and regurgitate and hash it over in my brain and see what you guys think. So let's see where they're going to go in this segment.
Now, here's the bad news. The unemployment rate is rising. Hiring is slowing. July's jobs report was the worst since the pandemic. Prices are up. Investment is down. And once again, confusion and chaos reign over who gets a tariff and who gets a delay and who gets a break. Oh, and Trump just fired the messenger in charge of the jobs reports. Why? Because
all right, so let's take a look at that stuff. Unemployment rate is up. So they did add jobs, even though they had to go back and say that a lot of the jobs that they added actually didn't happen. I don't know exactly how. I guess they estimate it and then they go back and they correct it. Like I guess when you get an electric bill and they estimate the bill and they're like, oh, you actually only spent $5, but they charged you $100, so they have to go back and. So prices are rising. I guess to what degree is she referring to? Because as far as I can tell, I mean, gas is still way cheaper. Relatively, groceries are cheaper. Business investment is down. Okay. That's something that I guess we can analyze or we'll go for. And the tariff uncertainty, again, that this is a speculative thing, right? The uncertainty of tariffs. Yeah, they're uncertain right now because we haven't gotten a deal yet. But the uncertainty will eventually come to an end. And to my point, and my argument is that once that happens, the market's going to roar and things are going to be booming again. Once they do the deal with China, this economy is going to explode. One. Two, factor in, which she didn't bring up here, which is surprising enough, once Powell lowers the rate, and that is going to happen, right? Whether it's going to September or it's going to begin, beginning of next year, it's going to happen. He is going to lower the rate. That's going to flood the market with liquidity, which is always a word I have an issue with saying. Housing's gonna jump. There's gonna be a boom, right? And the thing that the media, in my opinion, right now, they are tampering down the boom that's coming because it is coming. It's already kind of happening. We're in a rolling boil right now as far of a booming economy. We're bringing in money. Inflation's under control. Unemployment is steady there. Prices rising. I mean, I'm buying stuff as far as like an anecdotal thing. I'm not noticing the rising of prices. I'm still noticing the gas is pretty well kept in check. Business investment being down. How does that affect the middle America? I mean, I guess it could, but as far as like, the people that I'm in my circle, not really noticing much of that. So let's see where else they go on this crazy ride they're about to go down.
Because he didn't like the results.
We're doing so well. I believe the numbers were phony, just like they were before the election, and there were other times. So you know what I did? I fired her. And you know what? I did the right thing.
So, do you feel liberated yet? Well, it depends on who you ask. This firing of the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics is, I think, one of the more stunning things that Trump has done, not because people in Washington will be stunned, but because of the ripple effects that it will have for the people who rely on it around the globe and on Wall Street, people who make business decisions here in this country.
Yeah, I think that there's going to inevitably have to be a private sector alternative that emerges. Most of these statistics can be pulled after the fact. Even if the government tries to flood the numbers or fudge them, there is a way that we're going to be able to get that data. But keep in mind, he's toyed with the idea of firing Jerome Powell on a number of occasions. That's something that's much more difficult for him to do. There are checks in place. His lawyers, I bet, have advised him against doing so. This is something that's technically within his purview to do. But I think it raises concerns naturally if you're going to put somebody in place who's going to be a bit more favorable to you. Are they going to inflate the numbers as we see them? But to your opening, we're in a choose your own adventure economy. There's something good.
So are they going to do the things that they've always done? Right. I mean, you cannot look at Powell not raising the rates now and see that when Powell not lowering the rates, just prior to the election, What did he do? He lowered the rates, right? The justification there would have been the exact same justification right now. It's almost, they're almost parallel to each other, the two different scenarios. And he didn't do it. So what does that mean? Probably politics, right? Powell's upset that Trump has been picking at him. He knows he's on his way out. He's got 8 months left on his time there before he's gonna get kicked to the curb. And Trump has been pressuring him. Why? Because the winds are at Trump's back. He's doing really good economically, relatively speaking. I mean, he's laying the groundwork. And what people need to understand is it's an economy, right? It's like a locomotive or maybe a large ship. You can't turn this thing on a dime. You have to put things in place. You have to put guardrails in place. You got to start steering. You got to turn the vessel slowly. You don't want this thing to tip over, right? And create a disaster. That's what a lot of people thought was going to happen with the tariffs. It hasn't happened, right? The markets are going to fluctuate, right? The uncertainty is baked into the cake. They already know that, which is why it's still relatively at a record high. Right? But for the most part, you're gonna get those ebbs and flows in the system. That goes without saying. You're changing the system. You're changing course. There's gonna be some turbulence. That's how it goes.
There's plenty of good things you could point to, and there's plenty of bad things you could point to. What you don't need right now is this sort of just uncertainty when you're giving out basics around jobs numbers.
I mean, just 2 days ago, Howard Lutnick was saying GDP surged to 3% and the Trump economy has officially arrived. Biden's first quarter is behind us and growth is already accelerating. So the only thing that's really changed is Trump's mood.
Yeah. I mean, look, if I were a decision desk on the economy, I'd say it's too early to call. We don't know exactly where this Trump economy is necessarily going, though I do have to ask the question of whether or not the suit that Donald Trump wore on Friday is from the Banana Republic. Because when you fire a lifelong bureaucrat whose mere job is to count the numbers, count the number of jobs. This is not a partisan position. This, to me, is the worst of Donald Trump. That gets at the conspiracy theories. The idea that the 2020 election was stolen when clearly it wasn't. These job numbers weren't flubbed. This is a reaction to Donald Trump.
Clearly it wasn't. Clearly? Was it clearly wasn't? No. We'll find out. I'm pretty sure that CNN definitely reported that the Hunter Biden laptop was a complete fake. I'm pretty sure that CNN reported that Donald Trump was colluding with Russia. I'm pretty sure that CNN, I don't know if they were one of the ones that said that he was a sexual predator. From the amount of whether you call it fake news, I don't call it fake news, I call it lies. The amount of lies that were put out there about Trump, you can absolutely say, how can you not say that didn't sway people to vote in a different manner? And the fact that all of that stuff was promulgated by news agencies, probably working with Intel. Right? When you have, you look up Operation Mockingbird and things of that nature, it goes, okay, were votes changed over? I don't know. Was 2020 the most secure election of our time? Dude, the country was freaking locked down. There was mass mail-in ballots. Mass mail-in ballots. We know there was an absolute, insane amount of fraud going on during that election. Right? So if you want to say that legally he can't say that it was stolen or whatever, I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know how you jump to that conclusion when the amount of unknown is still present for 2020. 2020 is unknown. We'll never get to the bottom of it. In the end, ultimately, my opinion, 2020 was the best thing that could have happened to Donald Trump. Had Donald Trump won the 2020 election, we wouldn't be doing as anywhere near what we're doing now. He would have rolled in limping, barely having won, and it would have been the same thing. They would have plagued his administration again for the next 4 years. He got 4 years to sit down, think, plan, organize, right? Get these people around him that had these damn good ideas, and then methodically plot out the course that he's enacting right now. Joe Biden getting elected in 2020 was the best thing that could have happened for this country. I know that might sound crazy, but it's the absolute truth when you stop and you think about it. Right? Think about it like this. What would have happened? Trump would have been, again, president for another 4 years. He would have been gone right now. And I tell you what, with what the media would have done to him, what the media would have plagued their administration with, they would have gotten almost nothing done. And then you would have just had another liberal come into the office, and it would have been a disaster going forward. He would have gotten almost nothing done. You think he would have signed 100 executive orders in 6 days? Having limped into the office barely, he would have lost a popular vote. It wouldn't have been a mandate like it was. Joe Biden coming into this country, showing the public this is what it looks like when you put people like this in office, running it into the ground, $4 gas, $6 eggs, just DEI, LGBTQ, you just name it, trans, whatever, kids transitioning. It was 4 years of just beating normal people into the ground, because I don't even consider that these conservative topics, right? We shouldn't be mutilating children. That's a pretty baseline thing for most people, right? I don't think that's an 80-20 issue. Maybe, and the people that are on the edge of that issue, they probably don't even know exactly what's going on. They don't understand that giving these children these hormone therapies is essentially castrating them for when it comes to boys, and it's making these girls, crazy. Like, you're changing their hormones when they're going through puberty. But yeah,
Trump's tariffs that, at least in the near term, at least the job market did not necessarily like.
I think that's absolutely right. And what scares me here is this notion of, if you don't give me jobs numbers I like, I will fire you. What will the next person do, right? Every Trump firing is that, if you don't give me what I like. So does he live in a world where he doesn't actually know what's going on? Because the people who might say, hey, something bad is happening, wouldn't say it to him because they would risk losing their job?
Look, it is well within his purview to make this decision to fire the jobs person. It's well within purview to do it. And look, they had to make adjustments to the jobs numbers for the prior months. There were some adjustments that had to be made about a year ago in August. So when you look at it over time, it's within his purview to do it. If he doesn't have confidence in the person, he has a right to fire them.
In other words,
have consequences.
in other words, if he doesn't like the results that the person is producing, he can fire
remember,
them.
there was an adjustment in the results. The results weren't right.
That doesn't mean that the director was
This
wrong.
also isn't going to give him the solution he wants, because the reality is, and we said this all leading up to the
yeah, they were off by like 90%, by the way. Right. So if you guys aren't familiar, they said that I believe it was 1 month. They said it was 150,000 jobs that were made. It was like 17,000. Again, I'm not an economist. I don't know how these things work. I don't know if they're making an assumption or whatever, but they were off 2 months in a row by a factor of like 10. It wasn't like they were off, like 20%. They were off by like a factor of 10. Right. It was like a multiple of 10. They said 170,000 jobs were made, and it was 17,000. That's not a little flub. You're a couple of decimal places off. It makes a huge difference.
the election. You can give people whatever stats you want about the economy. How they feel is going to dictate their feelings. Heading into the midterms, if people they know are struggling to find jobs, if they've been laid off, if unemployment is up, they're going to know that regardless of what the Bureau of Labor Statistics
That's true.
says.
It also is true that revisions happen. They happen under every president. They happened when he was president the first time. They happened under Biden. So the idea that revisions are inherently a problem is nonsensical. That doesn't.
Well, I don't know that it's nonsensical. It's again.
It is.
Within the
it
province
is
of the president.
he's acting as if this is something new.
It's well within
he's acting as if this is something new when it's really not.
Why do all these people care that people get fired? People get fired every single day, as well they should, right? Some people get fired for no reason. You know what? I don't like you today. You're fired. Hello. Well, I get it. They're a bureaucrat, so they have to go through like all the rigmarole. There have been plenty of jobs that I had when I was growing up, when I was like, you know what, buddy? No explanation necessary. All right, boss. It's been nice. Well, I think one of my very first jobs was doing roofs. The work slowed down a little bit. He didn't listen, buddy. I don't need you for the next couple weeks or a month or whatever. It is what it is. Right? That's part of life. The fact that he fired people, who cares?
There are revisions actually almost every month. It's just that they're not always all large.
And the argument this is going to have some tremendous ripple effect on the economy long term. I mean, going back to your point, that it's really not. And we're not going to be talking about this a week from now.
We're not going to be able
100%.
to trust the government to tell us the truth. That is a very important thing, especially within a global economic context.
Yeah, okay. Why are you looking to the government to tell you anything, to be honest with you? Again, just like what he was saying and what everybody else agreed with, is that the people are going to know, right? If when we were going through a non-recession, I don't know if you guys remember this, if they bring that up, right? Two consecutive I think it's 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP is a recession. That happened under Biden, but they would not call it a recession. They redefined it and they said, no, this scenario is different, blah, blah, blah. And they gave us a whole bunch of excuses as to why. You want to tell me that's not political? Was CNN ranting and raving at the time? They were not. I was watching. They were absolutely not. So again, this is all about what's good for you is not good for me. And they're going to play this up. I personally, government sends me numbers about job. Okay, that's great. Do I have a job? Yeah. Do my friends and family have jobs? Yeah. Is everyone doing well? They're doing better. Gas is a huge component. Huge, probably the biggest. Stuff that we use every single day to get back and forth. Energy, right? Food. That's what people. If the government doesn't have to tell me what gas costs, the government doesn't have to tell me what I'm paying in groceries. I know that stuff because I'm out there doing it. So if they want to float whatever number they want, and say this pie in the sky, I really don't care. And most people don't. And they're saying that this is going to affect, investors and stuff like that. So you're telling me that the government putting out a number is going to affect like smart people that know what's going on and that understand that there could be a political underturn? Do you think that the smart people, when they were told it wasn't a recession, didn't think, yeah, it's a recession going on right now, and they didn't act accordingly? Of course not. Right? We understand. If you don't understand by now that your government lies to you and just makes shit up all the time, I don't know what to tell you. But at the very least, it's not going to impact your life on a daily basis, right? And we all understand that.
How do we know that the next person will tell us the truth because his job is on the line or her job is on the line?
That is a good question. I mean, how will we know?
Look, this person is not a protected job. We have elections on consequences.
But to answer his question,
we can change out folks in leadership positions because the president wants to.
I know, but Jim, to answer Teray's question, how does Trump explain to people that they should trust these numbers when he has literally explicitly fired someone because he did not like the numbers that they produced?
Or he didn't believe in the numbers, or the numbers had to be adjusted.
Going forward, when he put somebody in that position, the whole...
Yeah, it wasn't... the numbers were wrong. It's not that they didn't give him the numbers he wanted. If they would have put out the right numbers, right, rather than saying, oh, okay, yeah, you were doing really well. Oh, no, psych, you weren't. Just kidding. The numbers were wrong. So the person did something incorrect. However they got to that, I don't know. But they were.
The world is going to assume, well, that person has that job because that person's going to produce numbers that Donald Trump likes.
Look, that's why we have congressional oversight. Right? That's why Congress exists to have congressional oversight. And it's up to Congress then to hold these agencies accountable. We have checks and balances in this country.
Yeah,
the president isn't the only check and is not the only balance.
It's just interesting that Trump is sort of devoid of agency in this situation, as if he doesn't have the power to exert some kind of modicum of self-control in this moment.
Donald Trump can do a lot of things as president. The presidency is vested in enormous powers. But just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. Right. And in this particular case, I am somebody who studies stats. And, I give Donald Trump, I think, a very fair shake. I give all sides, I think, a pretty fair shake. But it is reliant on the numbers being reliable. And when you make moves like this, you see a little bit of doubt that the numbers going forward with whomever is put in charge of the BLS, all of a sudden, at least in terms of numbers, that they are not nearly what they should be.
And that's a very...
Or either that, or maybe they checked the numbers before they put them out. He's saying that the numbers be reliable. The numbers weren't right. And he was pissed about it. Because they overestimated it. It gave everybody a feeling of, walking tall, and then they punched him in the gut. That's why he was mad. So his premise doesn't make sense. The numbers weren't reliable. The numbers were wrong. And they were wrong, massively wrong. Again, they were wrong. So, they're doing a bait and switch here. They're saying that, they're getting mad because they're putting out the right numbers. No, he's getting mad because the initial numbers they put out were incorrect, and they had to correct them, making him look bad. That's why he's mad.
Key point, because if you put somebody in who's just a diehard Trump loyalist and suddenly you start saying off the charts numbers that just don't reflect the reality of the economy, Americans are not going to believe it. But we do live in such a polarized environment right now that about half the country is going to be like, yeah, I don't trust a Biden appointee, put in a Trump person. And the other half is going to be like, this is unprecedented. You're firing a bureaucrat who's not a partisan. So I think either way you're going to have a lack of trust, but I do think there's a way that
everybody's partisan. Everybody's partisan. Let's be honest. All right. We need to stop this whole, everyone is partisan. Whether or not it reflects a lot in what you do, okay, that might be something. But everybody's partisan. Everybody has a side. Everybody has a notion in their mind. It doesn't mean you cut left or right, but it means you have an ideology embedded within you, within everyone, and that's going to affect how you do things.
Numbers should
but your other point is trust the bureaucracy? Are we going to sit around this table and say that people in this country trust career bureaucrats at this point? I don't think that's the case.
For the last however many years, okay, everybody gets the jobs numbers on the first Friday of the month, and they digest them. But the more important thing about jobs numbers, I mean, yes, everybody understands the economy based on their own personal economy, what's happening in their families and their communities. But government entities businesses make decisions based on these official numbers. They matter because they are tied to something. So when they go away, I mean, we already have private sector numbers. ADP produces numbers, but the reason we have government numbers is because we have government entities that make decisions based on those numbers. When that goes away, what do we have?
She meant private entities that make decisions. What private entity, what business tycoon or what bright mind is sitting there thinking, well, I was going to make this, $1 billion investment, but let me see what the government says the numbers are. Yeah, it's going to affect the stock market 100%, but that's because that's a massive move, right? That's people that they see numbers and it ebbs and flows. That's just noise, right? That's just economic noise. That doesn't really do anything. In the end, S&P, look at it over a 20-year graph, you're going to see where it's going, right? Over a 6-month graph, it's going to be volatile, especially now, right? Because again, he is trying to make moves. He's trying to turn the ship. He's trying to implement his objective.
Are we going to sit around this table and say that government always gets it right?
Government
the bureaucrats always get it right?
not,
that we trust everything the bureaucracy?
Well, let me go back to what Harry Enton said.
There's no way the American
Let me go back to what Harry Enton said at the beginning. What makes the United States different from the Banana Republic or the Soviet Union or whatever it is actually, that over many decades, we've created a system in which people believe, not just us as Americans, but around the world, that American statistics and numbers and facts are generally reliable.
I think that is fading because it should, right? This whole believe the government thing, that's every government. Every government propagandizes their own people. Every government lies to get what it wants. The government is just a form of people that are in power that are trying to manipulate the populace as a whole in order to gain something. You have to understand that. The government isn't an entity. The government is groups of people, right? And they want to stay in power. They want to flourish. They want to do what's best for them. This whole notion that the government is this like thing in the ether that's just sitting there, and it's just people, and people lie. All of them do. No one can say that they've never lied, right? Government is composed of people. People lie to gain benefit for them. Guys, thank you so much. This was actually a pretty fun video. If you can, please hit the subscribe button, notification bell down below. That way you can be notified when I release another video. The X, follow me, 6283 Talk on the X if you're on X, and we'll see you again in the next video. Thanks a lot, guys. Later.